Remember to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes of Chemists in the Kitchen.
And oddly enough, I think lemongrass, it's, one of my favorite aromas, but it also reminds me of Fruit Loops. Did you ever eat Fruit Loops as a kid?
Well, yeah, as a kid, of course.
Yeah, so if you smell the lemongrass,
it reminds me of the orange, purple, and green Fruit Loops.
Yeah, totally, right?
That's
all you
so
need is
weird.
some milk in there, right?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Daisy Rosas Vargas. I'm here at the Los Angeles Athletic Club to do some prepping for an event in a couple of days called the Periodic Table. Let's go meet Chef Marcel.
Hi, Daisy. Welcome to the Los Angeles Athletic Club.
Thank you for having me, Chef.
Today we're going to be cooking with the Periodic Table dinner for the National Academy of Sciences, and I'm so excited to be working with you.
Yeah, let's go up to your kitchen and talk some food and chemistry.
Let's go check it out. So I think maybe we'll just run through the menu and kind of talk about what we're going to do for the party, and then we can actually get to the fun part, which will be the cooking.
And tasting, don't forget that.
Yeah, the best part,
So what are we gonna make?
One of the first courses that we're actually gonna do, we're calling it Are You a Super Taster? And what we wanna identify is if people are super tasters and basically how many, taste buds they have within that dish. And then also we're gonna have a fun little color changing reaction. And I think ultimately the dish has to be delicious, right?
Yes.
So for this dish, we're gonna make a Thai infused butterfly pea broth. We're also gonna do a nuoc cham. We're gonna have some fun citrus in there like grapefruits, the avocado, the beets, and we'll do a little bit of some other garnishes like the lime and the cilantro and stuff like that. That dish will also have some raw fish, so we'll do some salmon today, and that'll be our first course.
Sounds good. It looks like a lot of citrus things, which speaks chemistry to me.
So we're gonna start with our crudo, and then we're gonna move into one of our snacks, our liquid olives. We're gonna take some Castel Vetrano olives, and then we're gonna juice them, and then we're gonna do what I refer to as a controlled gelification. We'll add a little bit of activated charcoal because they're green olives, but we'll give them the appearance of a black olive. When you look at it, it looks like an olive, but then when you eat it, it has a completely different texture.
That just sounds like chemistry.
Yeah.
So let's get cooking.
What we're gonna do first is we're gonna make our butterfly pea broth. We have some of these dried flowers here, which you can see are kind of like a bright blue. The flavor on the butterfly pea flower is a little vegetal, so I'm gonna basically add a little bit of extra flavor, have it enjoy all these delicious Thai flavors. So we're gonna do the lemongrass, we're gonna add our water, and essentially we're kind of making a tea.
Yeah, so in chemistry, we call this an extraction. We're trying to extract something from it, whether it's color, flavor. Sometimes when we're in a lab, we try to extract certain compounds, which I'm assuming is what's going on in that pot right now.
Right, yeah, so we are gonna extract all of the flavor. We're gonna do a little bit of infusion as well. So we're also gonna add in the lime leaves. I like to actually bruise it a little bit to really sort of bring out the flavor. So, with these guys, if you just crush them in your hands, you'll sort of really start to get all the oils. If you don't actually bruise the leaves, you don't get that same flavor release. Do the same thing with the lemongrass, and I do the same thing with the lime leaves. And then we have butterfly pea flowers. I'm actually gonna wait to add these because I wanna extract quite a bit of flavor from the lemongrass and the lime leaf. And then this will be kind of our last minute sort of infusion, and we'll steep these leaves to get that color and the rest of those flavors.
Yeah, there's a lot of extraction going on when you heat something up, especially like you said, there are these oils in the leaves. Those are much heavier than probably the chemical compounds found in the butterfly tea. And so that may not take as long to extract. So I like that idea. That's really good.
Yeah, right. While this is infusing, we can go ahead and make our nuoc cham. So we have fish sauce, a little bit of palm sugar, lime juice, and some distilled vinegar. So if you want to just go ahead and we can add all of those ingredients into our bowl here. We're gonna add a little bit of lemongrass to this one as well. I'm just gonna take the heart of the lemongrass out. Oftentimes lemongrass is known for being super woody. The outside leaves, if you try to chew on it, it's not very palatable. The inside actually has a very nice sort of like softer texture. We can basically chop up the hearts and we'll add those into our nuoc cham. You want to give it a little whisk and see if we can start to get some of that sugar to dissolve? I didn't add it, but I think we should probably a little bit of spice, right?
Yes.
Maybe a little bit of Fresno. I feel like we need to have a little bit of heat.
A little bit of a kick. So I always add heat to everything. So that sounds like a great idea.
All right, I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab a Fresno.
One eternity later.
All right, so we've got our Fresno. I think everything's always better with like a little bit of heat, right?
And the color too.
And the color, right? Nice and vibrant. As you are aware, the majority of our heat is coming from our veins and our seeds. I'm actually gonna remove those. Fortunately, I think it's just you and I tasting today, so we can maybe kick up the heat a little bit.
I'm down for that.
Let's just get it all in there, right? Yeah. So we've got our sauce work going. Our nuoc cham is made. Our butterfly pea broth is beginning to extract and infuse. Now I think we can work on our vegetal components for this. For the rest of the dish, we're gonna do our grapefruit, and then we also have our beets and our avocados. And I'm hoping, we'll probably have to add maybe a little bit more fat. Today we're gonna do salmon, which will be a nice, fatty fish.
Yeah, the more fat you bring into a dish will usually help tone down that spiciness. Fat and capsaicin are actually what we call soluble with each other. They're able to mix well. So it actually tones down the heat and prevents it from getting to our tongue receptors, so we don't feel the heat as much.
So for our segments, I'm just gonna go ahead and take out the grapefruit. And for these, we're just gonna remove that little membrane, right? And just kind of keep it so we have the flesh.
The citrus is almost gonna be like on double duty. It's gonna help us change the color of our butterfly tea. And it's also gonna help prevent the avocado from turning brown. So it's gonna prevent oxidation. And so butterfly tea has something called anthocyanins, which are actually found in a lot of different things that have color, like red cabbage, red onion,
purple cauliflower.
Purple cauliflower. The grape juice here, the acid, is basically gonna give hydrogens to these anthocyanins. Electrons on the molecule are gonna just move to a different location, but it's still the same molecule. And that's where it's gonna turn from this bluish purple to maybe like a pink.
And that's science.
Yes.
I love it. It's interesting, when I was younger, I wasn't like the biggest chemist, and it wasn't until I got into cooking that I really started to kind of like excel when it came to science, because I was able to find like an application for the knowledge. Where are we now? We've got our citrus, we've got our broths, we have our beets. For the beets, we actually took off the tops, and we're gonna save the tops, and we're gonna use those in a different course. A lot of chefs, we strive to cook like grandma, and it's like, why grandma wasn't throwing away the beet tops, you know what I mean? She had 8 kids to feed or whatever it was. Things that oftentimes would get thrown away, in French kitchens where I grew up. I've actually started to ask the question, why? It's like, why are we throwing out the inside of the tomato?
And the key thing that you said is always asking questions, which is what I like scientists do.
Yeah, for sure. So we have our salmon as well. I was thinking for the salmon, it might be kind of nice to just do like a little dice, and then we'll dress the salmon with our nuoc cham, and we'll put it inside of our avocado, and then essentially we can just garnish the dish with the rest of our ingredients.
So most of the time we cook, like poultry, meats with heat, right? That's one way of cooking. Actually, another way of cooking is, like, as you mentioned, using the acid from all of these ingredients. They all have some type of acidic component. How the cooking actually happens is I brought a prop. Adrian always makes fun of me with props, but I brought a prop. So something like this.
Oh, she brought props.
Yeah, I did. This is our protein. And it has this, jumbled, very non-cohesive structure. And when we bring acid into, or even just like cooking with heat, we're gonna break some of these interactions and they're gonna repel each other. So think of having a magnet going opposite direction.
Right.
So our protein that is raw is actually gonna unwind itself to something maybe like this. And this is actually the protein structure of what we actually eat when it's actually cooked. So this is what's going to be going on with our salmon and the acid from all these things.
Ooh, I love that. And that's probably going to become a little bit more digestible from a consumption standpoint, because now your body is processing something in a straight line as opposed to like
Something that's more complex.
super jumbled. We have our salmon dressing. We've got our beets. We've got our citrus. I do believe we're actually ready.
It smells
for our pea flowers
amazing.
in here. So I think for the plate up, maybe we use our little avocado as kind of like a bed for the rest of our ingredients. Just put our fish right inside there. And a little bit extra broth, right? Because as you said, that broth is gonna kind of prevent our avocado from oxidizing. Nobody wants an oxidized avocado. And then even I think a little bit extra on the plate. So when we pour that butterfly pea broth, we'll have a nice solid reaction happening. And the beet is gonna start to bleed a little bit as well. We'll garnish a little bit of cilantro. And then I think for our broth, strain out these leaves. And then my thought is we'll present the dish, you know, on the table, and then they'll have one of these little butterfly pea broths kind of like off to the side. And then I think they can just kind of pour a little bit of the broth and then they can enjoy the reaction. And I think it's going to continue to change colors just as it continues to
Come into
marinate.
contact with those acidic compounds in the beets. We're gonna make our second dish for the event. What are we gonna make?
Yeah, so this is going to be part of our cocktail hour. These are our activated carbon spheres, which are basically going to be like a form of a liquid olive. So what we're going to do for this is do a controlled jellification between sodium alginate, a seaweed derivative, and then we have our calcium. So for the process, usually I start with the base. This will be our base over here. Two simple ingredients. We have our algin, and then we have our water, and we're just going to hydrate the hydrocolloid by shearing. We have our olives. We just kind of grind them up, and then we're gonna juice them. And we're gonna extract the olive juice from the olives. These are Castelvetranos, which are kind of one of my personal favorite olives. And it'll look like an olive, but it's gonna have the texture of an egg yolk. So for this, there's a kind of like an order of operations, right? The first thing that we want to do is add our calcium, and that is going to disperse and dissolve pretty quickly. Actually, just a little agitation, almost kind of like any other salt.
Yep, calcium chloride is a salt. It's just a heavier salt than what we're used to at the
Right.
table, which is sodium chloride.
Yep. So what do you think? You want to hydrate some of these hydrocolloids?
Sure.
I'm going to add the activated charcoal. Even though there's oil in there, it's kind of homogeneous. But this xanthan gum is going to not only emulsify that oil into the solution, but also we're going to increase our viscosity slightly.
How does that look?
That looks fantastic. So because when we were shearing, we incorporated a lot of oxygen into this, just like we did our base, I'm going to swap these out for a base and a bath that I made yesterday that doesn't have the same amount of oxygen in it. All right, so you ready to make some controlled jello?
Sure.
So this is a fun process. Here we have our olive base that we made.
Without oxygen.
Without oxygen.
Okay.
We actually compressed it in our vacuum machine to kind of pull out some of that extra oxygen. This is our algin base, which we made without oxygen, as it dissipated. And then this is actually just water that we rinse, so basically it can stop the reaction from happening. And then we store them in olive oil. So I'll give you a little demo on this one first. I think there's still a little bit of oxygen in here, so we may have to tap it to get it to sink. It was just like a little flick of the wrist, and then a little boop. Oh, and then
Rinse in between.
yeah, because I went into my algin, I don't want this to start gelling.
Jellifying. Yeah.
Oh, there you
This
go.
one on its
That one
own.
dropped on its own. Essentially, we have a gelatinous exterior membrane, but the interior is still going to be, super liquid. So this guy, for example, when I puncture this, it should still be liquid in the middle, and then it should have, that little jacket of a exterior. So we still have a liquid inside, but then just a little exterior membrane.
So something else that maybe is why these end up being plumper in olive oil, the surface is, right, like a sugar, but there's also a little bit of water actually left over from your rinse. The water is really trying to get that olive oil away.
Right.
So
Right.
I think it's almost creating like this extra bubble where it allows like this solidification of that jacket that we were just talking about.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense.
So it looks like we've made our 2 dishes for the event. I'm ready to start tasting them because I'm getting really hungry.
Yeah, let's do it. The proof is
Okay.
in the pudding. Yeah, get in there, please.
Okay. The acid plays so well with that fattiness in the avocado and the salmon.
Obviously not too spicy.
No, I
Use
would
a little bit
actually
more?
say more.
A little bit more? Right.
Well, spiciness wasn't the only thing we talked about with this dish, right? We added those cilantro leaves and like how some people taste, soap or other herbs. And I was like doing some reading, and it actually goes back to how we were talking about how like things that were bitter were more likely to be toxic. And it could be that just those people are, more attuned to like this bitter taste and their bodies react almost like as a default, like, hey, this is like not good for you.
Or maybe just in moderation, right?
Yeah.
It's like you could have just a little bit. It's curious how a lot of those ingredients that are actually toxic, we still use as a spice, right?
Yeah.
So like cinnamon, for example, they're actually highly toxic, but we use them in such moderation that, unless you've tried the cinnamon challenge,
No,
right? I think
no.
that was popular for a while there. We just don't use them enough to where they're actually become like toxic for us. We just use it, as an ingredient or as like a flavor. Cool. Well, I think this is a winner.
I do. I think everybody at the event is gonna really like this.
Yeah.
So this is the second dish, right? So first we're looking at pH and things that were being, cooked with acid and being preserved and preventing oxidation. Here we're actually doing some spherification.
And still like a controlled jellification, but interesting enough, no acid really in this dish. But the olives, I think, have a nice sort of like salty, briny thing, and kind of a nice blend of modern and traditional with a heavy dose of science. I recommend just one bite, take your tongue and push it up to the roof of the mouth and let it pop.
I like the trick of the eyes where it's like, yeah, I am expecting either like a black egg, like egg yolk,
Right.
or the black olive, but it totally tastes great.
Yeah, and then I like how the olive oil just kind of like, it kind of lingers on the palate.
Yeah, it enhances that oil that was like naturally there while we were doing the emulsification process. Yeah, I like how you incorporate like so much science, and that's kind of what we do at Chemists in the Kitchen. So thank you, Chef Marcel, for taking me through all these dishes today and, helping me talk the science with it. And thank you everybody for watching. And we'll see you on the next episode of Chemists in the Kitchen.
That was great. It's perfect. Done. Cool. And we started the meal off with a tab. We're going to end the meal off with a pill. You guys are going to have a fun drive home.